It seemed like as I really researched all the stuff you guys are building and how you're positioning 618, I heard the word leverage and verticals throughout it, right? So multiple verticals. And then you also mentioned when you were introducing some of the stuff you were doing from Vegas, you said cross-cultural. And then that carries over into collaborations now. This is a whole new game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just it's not a new game, because at the end of the day, this has been happening since Jack Daniels and Frank Sinatra were in Vegas together back in the early days, when Frank Sinatra wasn't an ambassador, he wasn't attached to the brand, but because his lifestyle and his culture, and when people were interviewing him saying, what golf club are you a member of? He was a member of a golf club, but he loved Jack Daniels. Said, I'm a member of the Jack Daniels Country Club. Well, that just went nuts. Where's the Jack Daniels Country Club? All this conversation started. This is all pre-internet. But what that did is that showed a brand stickiness. I use the term brand stickiness, where you have music, liquor, events. It can be liquor, it can be anything and what it may be. But what you had there were two cultures colliding, which made it an incredible kind of moment happen for a brand, to the point where Jack Daniels went out of allocation. They had to change their ad campaign saying, we're unavailable. Sorry for the inconvenience. It's quality over quantity. So Jack Daniels then had to position themselves based off of an organic thing happen with an artist. And I think going back to this cross-culture lifestyle phenomenon, it's been going on since the day brands and products have been working on. And I think where I'm seeing it now more than ever is that these artists, and I use artists and musicians more than anything because I feel they're the ones that are most misrepresented, where they're more than just a merch act. They're more just a touring ticket act. They're more than just being on radio or getting a sync or getting a music or a song on a game. There's all these other things that go into being an artist. And I think you see it in the pop world. You see it in hip hop specifically. And now you're starting to see it a little bit with Metallica, where they're crossing into lifestyle. They're crossing into cultures. We saw it with Blackened. We've seen it with Slipknot and their whiskey. We've seen it with other brands too. But what it comes down to is just finding the little niches and the lanes where not only are you super serving your core audience, you're super serving your entire demographic.
So leveraging a brand. So is it important? Like I go all the way back to when Paul Mitchell, the shampoo and hair guy, created a tequila brand. So is it essential that you have a brand built that then you can leverage? Can you bring them up together, or do you pretty much have to have that brand to work with that you can cross collaborate and across cultural lines?
See, it's funny. It goes back to you can't fit a square peg in a round hole. Like Paul Mitchell, and I don't know enough about his brand. I don't know the success of it, and I could be completely speaking out of turn because it could be highly successful in some people's eyes. But unless you're a fan of the product that you're trying to get into, like I'm not a country fan, like I'm not a country musician all of a sudden saying I'm going to be a metal band, right? It's the same thing. It's like it needs to be so much on the head where it works for the conversation. So Paul Mitchell, if he was a tequila fanatic, and he's at all these distilleries, he's traveling, he's on his social media in Mexico and trying tequila and tasting tequila, and it's a part of his culture and it's part of his ethos as a human being, then a tequila collab would work for a Paul Mitchell because he's authentically out there in the marketplace.
Yep. So this comes from authenticity. So do you think that was the thing with Conor McGregor and his whiskey brand? I mean, did that thing?
Oh, yeah. That was authentic because and I'm speaking completely direct to the point. That's a $20 liquor brand. It serves its point. It's not there to sip. It was never on a quality perspective. It was always played as a volume perspective. But that goes back to what McGregor's fan is. That's shot culture. That's the Jameson culture, right? They really went after that Jameson crowd. Jameson's never been a cocktail. Jameson's never been sitting there like, oh, I'm gonna have a Jameson neat at the bar. It's never came in. And Irish whiskey is drank neat at the bar, but Jameson isn't. A proper 12 isn't. But there's incredible Irish whiskeys out there that you would sip. But in those two cases, that was the core demo. Cheap price point, hit my super serve my consumer, build into my ecosystem where I can authentically talk about it because McGregor's out there. He's at the bars. He's at the events. He's always talking about building businesses and being an entrepreneur. And so him attaching himself to Diageo and Proper 12 was a fantastic move, especially the price point they came at. It wasn't a $70, $80, $90, $100 price point. It was right there in that $20, $30, which was very safe for his consumer to get behind. And then if you're a fan of McGregor and you're watching UFC fight, it's gotten into muscle memory. I'm going to order that Proper 12, or I'm going to order that whatever it may be. And Monster Energy did the same thing with UFC. Just putting that claw next to the ring and on the ring, and having the fighters have the claw on their jerseys or on their shorts or whatever they're walking out to. That's a direct hit when it comes to culture, because Monster Energy, that aggressive energy drink, makes a lot of sense for the UFC and those types of fighters because they're high energy, aggressive brand.
Makes sense. What about, I'm sitting here thinking like, man, let me challenge Clay in some way. Like, what about a Ryan Reynolds and a Mint Mobile? Like, how's that happen?
I don't know. I know Ryan Reynolds had incredible gin though with aviation, and that goes back to a guy that's out there selling it. It's authentic to him. It's important to him. He loves gin, so he's basically saying, "I make the best gin. I'm going to go out there and put my name and my brand behind it." That's the key here. Is like you got to put your money where your mouth is, especially if you want to come in and create a new business, a real business that can act as a new revenue stream for you, and not just be there as like, oh, we have the River and Nichols conversation. No, like, we want to create real revenue streams that didn't exist prior to this. And if you do it right, a liquor stream can be that. Any of these alternative revenue streams can be that in the collaboration space.
What's your thoughts about years ago, if an influencer, we all love the term, and all these kids growing up, they want to be YouTube influencers, and hey, that's great aspirations, but you better be the elite of the elite. But let's say somebody has 5 million Instagram followers and they're paid to do some type of influencing post. They're paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a post. Is it essential to find the right celebrity to do that influencer post? Like, does that connection need to hang up too? Even if the influencer doesn't have an interest or a stake in the thing, that still is important?
It does, because imagine like you're going to an influencer doesn't drink or isn't authentic to the brand, and it just looks like a cash grab. I mean, you can look at the Fire Festival as a low-hanging fruit example. You just get a bunch of influencers to put your money into something, buy tickets. They buy tickets. The brand didn't see the return because the festival didn't happen. It was actually turned into multiple documentaries. And a lot of the times the influencer gets targeted when it comes to that, because they're the face of these campaigns too. So, going back to like making sure it works, the influencer's got to be on brand too, right? So it's like, you're not going to put a sober, and I use this, a sober artist to talk about Jack Daniels. No, you want to have a whiskey person. You want to have an artist that sings about whiskey, talks about whiskey, tours, loves whiskey. It's a part of their culture to be your brand ambassador, and they'll be happy to be those brand ambassadors, because now you have an authentic fan. And I think as you get to that next tier of brand where you get fandoms involved, like a Monster Energy, and we use those Monsters, those Jacks, those Bud Lights of the world, like that's just core culture. And there's already a fandom built within that. So it's about attacking the right fan that actually has influence, in my opinion. So I only want to work with people that that enjoy what they're doing. So, if you want to do a whiskey, you better love whiskey, because you don't have to sit there for multiple days and weeks talking about your blends and your flavor profiles to get it right. Because when we come to market, we don't want to just be a flash in the pan. It's like, oh, it's another band collab. And there's a lot of those conversations that happen. It's okay to be a small band, come out small, do it right. And then you're a band like Goodbye June that does a collab with 3-Chord Bourbon. And all of a sudden you have a bourbon that's ranked in the top 40 of all American whiskeys released last year. So I think that's a good way of like, okay, now we're authentically introducing ourselves, because we're cred, we're core. And I use the beverage space specifically because it's so fickle to release, because there's so many out there and it's such a hot topic. But if you come in there right with a good product, and you're a fan of the product, and you can speak with education behind it, you're off to the races.